Psychedelics do not come without risk, and I think that that's something the psychedelic community has struggled to talk about. I think it's because the results can be so positive for a lot of us that we want to spread the word without discouraging anybody, similar to what Tim Leary kind of did in the 60s. It's the 5th day of Psychedelic Week, and I want to dedicate today to harm reduction, safety, psychedelic therapy, trip sitting, and we'll also be focusing on the throat chakra later. In the early days of psychedelic research in the 50s, they had actually made a lot of progress in honing in on creating the best possible outcome for a psychedelic trip. They learned that set and setting were the ultimate keys to your success. Set includes the intentions that you set and just kind of your emotional stability at the time. Setting means the environment that you trip in. So you need to know you're in a safe and supportive place and that there's at least someone who knows you're going to be tripping or someone with you who will be there just in case things go really wrong. These kind of people being there can help prevent your fearfulness turning into outright panic. Here's an interesting clip of how the early psychedelic researchers thought about set and setting for their patients.
When the person was accepted to go through the program, he was given an outline to write his history, what problems he had, if he had any health problems, what was the relationship with his parents, what was his childhood like. So then they came to the session and some introductory remarks were made. The importance, for example, of just releasing to the experience and knowing that they had help and could ask questions. And then they were administered LSD. And then we would lie them down on the couch. We'd put headphones on them and encourage an internal journey. And then we would put on music. And we would keep playing the music. And usually it's been the first 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours there. And that's what we wanted, for them to go deeply into themselves and explore. Of course, we were taking notes and we had a tape recorder so that everything that was said was recorded.
Can I come up for a minute?
Certainly, David.
So then after 4, maybe 5 hours, they would feel like coming out and sitting up, so we began to talk.
That was magnificent.
And they would go to the group, say, once a week, and they'd share experiences with each other.
My feeling was in this that if you're sort of looking for paradise after this experience, you begin to realize that it's right here, wherever you happen to be, like where we're sitting.
You make your own heaven and hell.
I don't think that a medical or therapeutic setting is always necessary, but I do think it's always necessary to take every precaution you can and think about all possible contingencies. And this is all from a Western, American and European perspective, while the indigenous people of South and Central America have been practicing set and setting through the use of rituals. Here's Ralph Metzner, Ram Dass, and Albert Hoffman talking about their thoughts of set and setting and the ideal place to have a psychedelic experience.
Well, when you look at the peyote experience, it's a church, it's a religion, it's also healing. It helps them with actual medicine, and for example, in treatment of alcoholism. It's also psychotherapeutic. It's an integrated experience.
I suspect the best thing we can do would be to ritualize this.
We should have a kind of meditation centers where there would be the right conditions, the right dosages, all these factors which must be known are fulfilled.
I always recommend, if you're tripping solo, to have somebody either in another room or someone who is going to be waiting or expecting a phone call from you, knowing that you're going to be tripping. The positive presence of a friend like that can totally keep a trip from derailing, and it can actually push it in the total opposite direction. I have experience with this where during my first ego death, I was really kind of starting to freak out because I didn't know what was coming. And my friend was there and had a little bit of experience. I think that also helps a lot if your sitter has experience. And he knew that I was going through some shit, basically. So he held my hand and was there for me like a brother or someone, a dear friend, like you're on your deathbed. And it was my ego's deathbed, but it was feeling like I was dying. And the fact that he did that and showed me the presence and compassion, I feel like that is what actually turned my trip completely into a positive one. That was just my most life-changing experience ever. So I kind of owe it going that well to him. If you're someone prone to a mental illness, things can get really bad for you in a psychedelic setting. Psychedelics can catalyze a mental break if they mesh with the wrong person at the wrong time. All psychonauts have at least one friend who you could say got a little bit lost in the deep end and never came back from their psychedelic trips. And it's really sad. If there's anything we can do to prevent these kind of acid casualties from happening, we should take all the steps necessary to prevent that from ever happening. So I'm actually going to have a guest doing a little segment for today's Psychedelic Day, and it's going to be my friend Farmboy Slim. He's got some friendly pointers for harm reduction and safety for all you trippers.
We can't always be honest with ourselves, and we're all going to make mistakes. But what is important is that we grow from those mistakes and become better for them. So too with psychedelics. On your journey, you're going to make mistakes. It's easy to abuse something that makes you feel so alive and happy. But it's important to remember that abuse is not dependent on how much you use a psychedelic. It's not like alcohol or heroin. For many people, once in their entire life is the healthy dose. For others, once a week. But neither is incorrect if you're truly being honest with yourself. Each of us needs to find in our life what works for us. So when I say that psychedelic abuse can lead to serious psychological harm, I'm not talking about how often you take them. I'm talking about how you use them. Before I use psychedelics, I always think and weigh my options between taking them and not. Do I really need to? Do I feel I need to? Am I taking them for the right reasons? Am I rushing into it? Remember, you can always take more, even if you haven't taken any. But you can never take less. Be safe, my friends.
Sweet. Thank you, Farmboy Slim. I love this guy's content. I discovered him on TikTok, and he actually just started getting his YouTube channel active, so I'm gonna link you guys his YouTube channel. Go follow him. He does really great harm reduction based content, and as you can tell, wears the giant mushroom costume, which is awesome. So check him out and support him as well. I want to talk a little bit about the abuse of psychedelics. So it's pretty well known that psychedelics are not physically addictive in the same way that opiates are or alcohol. But the thing is, people have such amazing experiences that they often want to relive them. So they'll take psychedelics a little more often than they should. And also keep in mind that tolerance goes up really fast with psychedelics. I think that if you're super intentional, you could trip lightly twice a week for a little while, but that shouldn't last forever. Personally, I use psychedelics every 3 to 6 months. And actually, within this last year, I've only tripped once. It's actually about to be 1 year for me since my last mushroom trip. But I think that's okay because I've spent a lot of time actually trying to integrate a lot of the material that came up during my psychedelic experiences so that when I do go back to the mushroom or LSD or whatever it is, I don't get smacked in the face for not having integrated what I learned in my previous experiences. hopefully I can keep going deeper into this realm. It's also super important to test your substances, especially when you're dealing with any kind of powdered substance. You really want to test, and acid too. There are tons of test kits available if you just Google for what you're looking for. Please be super careful out there, y'all. Fentanyl is killing people right now, and I have been sold fake acid before that turned out to be 25I N-bomb, which is a psychedelic that is one of the few that actually causes death sometimes. So please be super careful. I know a lot of people probably are being a little bit careless, but we need to do better collectively. I want to talk a little bit about trip sitting. Once you become a little bit experienced, you might want to be a trip sitter for your friends. I was a trip sitter for 3 of my friends during one of their experiences a while back, so I got really prepared. I read a book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, specifically the section about being a good trip sitter. It's from people who are very experienced in this area, so I wrote an outline of notes before I went to go trip sit for my friends. Trip sitting really deserves its own entire video, so I'm gonna just kind of give you an outline of the notes that I took from this book. I wrote, have everyone either say or write questions or goals for what they would like to engage in the experience, and let them refer to it during the trip, or if they want to just let whatever arises happen. As a guide, remember to have compassion, intuition, and loving kindness. Suggestions at the right moment may help the voyager make a pivotal discovery or retain insight. If an experience is troubling, reassure them that it's normal and it will pass. Stay centered and tranquil. Be willing to realign your support with their shifting experiences. If their sense of reality is being stretched, say, yes, that's good. Would you like to know more? In a gentle suggestion. You can alleviate fear of dissolving self by explaining it to them as a possibility in the preparation phase. If they become fearful, clarify that it's normal and it will pass. Reassurance, gentle touch, and suggesting deep breathing. And make sure that this person's okay with you touching them beforehand, please. Allow them to collect experience and not think about them so much as they occur. Discuss later. It's important that they accept everything in the trip as gifts, even if it appears as darkness or suffering. If they feel uncomfortable with the music, wait a few minutes before changing just to make sure they aren't clinging to control. Judge by the situation. Know that you're creating a sacred space together. After the come up should be about letting go of all that doesn't serve your journey. If they feel they're dying, remind them that their body is fine and this is happening in their mind, and that the guide is here to take them through it. Take notes if asked to. So yeah, tons of really good advice in there. Psychedelic therapy can be one of the most effective ways to heal from your trauma, PTSD, just issues that you're trying to work on. Research into psychedelic therapy and psychedelics in general began in the 1950s, and stuff was actually really progressing until it was banned in the late 60s. Research was completely halted until very recently. A few small studies involving psilocybin and DMT happened in the early 2000s, and now we're on the cusp of a psychedelic renaissance that is using the medical and therapeutic side of psychedelics as a way to legitimize them in the eyes of people who might be skeptical. This is actually the strategy first proposed by MAPS, and I would say it's a pretty good one, but I don't think we should make this our only model of the use of psychedelics. There are tons of studies going on, and Johns Hopkins actually just opened this big fancy psychedelic research center, so it's really a new era right now. It's an exciting time to see what's going to happen with the future of psychedelics. For now, there's still a Schedule 1 substance in the United States. The reason I think that the medical side is a good way to convince people is because if you think about someone who might be really against drugs, like a super hyper conservative American type of person, and if you frame it to them in the sense of like, we can give this MDMA to a veteran who has trauma after coming home from the war, and this is the only thing that is working to help our veterans. I feel like things like that, you can frame it in that way, which is true. It's not a lie, it's not a deception. This is a really beneficial thing. So I think that's why it can be great for convincing people to get on board. MAPS formed in 1986, and they've been the ones behind a lot of this research into the effectiveness of psychedelics helping with depression and trauma and PTSD. It can be effective therapy for so many different ways, but one of the main ways is just the power of the mystical experience to reset a depressed brain. It allows you to connect to something larger than yourself, to something even divine. The other thing it can do is help you to look at your problems and your trauma. Whenever you're in the glow and the euphoria of a psychedelic experience, you can look at these things from a perspective of feeling really good and feeling not scared and feeling whole and complete within yourself during a trip. Especially during MDMA, you're just feeling this very accepting feeling, and you can look at your problems and traumas without any fear attached. And that fear is often the thing that's blocking us from really unpacking these issues that we have. MDMA is really good at that. I actually made a video about my own kind of DIY MDMA therapy at home, and I'll link that in the description. So today we're also going to look at the throat chakra. The throat chakra is the center of creativity and expression. It's a center for communication and being able to speak your personal truth. When it's blocked, for me, I feel like I just can't say what I really want to say, and I can't speak in an authentic way, or that I can't express myself in general. The color associated with this chakra is blue. We've been talking about the chakras as these biological circuits, this idea that comes from Timothy Leary. In their eyes, the throat chakra is the first post-terrestrial chakra. So the idea is that your root, sacral, solar plexus, and heart chakra deal with matters on the earthly plane of existence. Tim Leary's wild idea is that these higher chakras are higher circuits that become activated by psychedelics. He suggests that these are a preview for what's to come in our evolution. Whenever we become spacefaring civilizations in the future, these are the chakras that we'll be operating in. Super cool sci-fi idea. One time I smoked a joint and I had a vision of the Beatles, and I saw the different singers of the Beatles when their songs played, and I noticed also that it showed me which chakra these songs were based in, like which area of the chakras it was emanating from. When I saw Paul McCartney, I saw the energy going through his throat chakra. I could see the elements churning inside of his body, and it was like he was expressing this magical material that was inside of him. He was singing and dancing. The best way I can describe what I saw inside of him is alchemical stardust. He was also lifted out of the atmosphere, floating miles above the earth, but he was still connected and rooted to the earth through this energy beam that went all the way down. This vision also lines up interesting with a quote from Carl Jung talking about the throat chakra, so I'm going to read that to you. He said, "Here one rises above the empiric world and lands into a world of concepts. With certainty, we realize our psychic existence as the only reality through experience." Another way to look at the series of chakras would be that it is like climbing from rude matter to a fine or psychic form. It is where Tantra yoga and Western alchemy intersect, the transmutation of crude matter into the subtle form of spirit. So this is like what I was talking about with the lower chakras kind of representing the earthy, earthbound side of things, and then as you go up it becomes more etheric. In the throat chakra, we reach above our contemporary ideas of the world. In a certain sense, we reach out into the etheric plane. It is as if a rocket has propelled us into space, a space where the psychic reality is the only reality. This world will be reached if we succeed to build a symbolic bridge between the most abstract ideas of physics and the most abstract ideas of analytical psychology. This is the last chakra that Jung feels can be assimilated into Western thought. So I just thought that was interesting because it seems to resonate very well with my vision of Paul McCartney and the throat chakra. To balance this chakra, I think sound meditation is a really great way to do it. Because it deals with sound and vibration, I would also recommend singing, even if you're not good at it, and try your hardest to express yourself truthfully. I know it's hard to hold your thoughts in sometimes, and I'm not saying you should blurt out everything that comes to your mind, but if you feel strongly about something and you feel like it's the truth, you should say it. I'm someone who has strong feelings about certain things, but I also really don't like conflict. So a lot of the time, if I hear something that's kind of messed up, I wouldn't say anything. But I've gotten a lot better about speaking the truth calmly and confidently when I feel the need. I'll link the video to the sound bowl meditation for the throat chakra. I'll put the link in the description for you, and I'll be doing that one today too. Another good way to make sure this chakra is balanced is to try to make sure that you're not holding tension in this area of the body. That can be another good way. So stretch your neck. There's also specific yoga poses that cater to this. All right guys, Psychedelic Week has been a lot of fun so far. So if you like this, there's a playlist full of all these videos, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Peace.